All right, Hunter time. I actually kind of like Hunter as a class after this Journey to Ungoro change and after the changes from 7.1. I think that overall the meta's a lot slower and there's a lot of taunt and a lot of things that should make you say that you shouldn't be playing a sort of tempo aggressive deck. I think that Hunter is one of these decks that can still do that tempo aggressive strategy, and I really do enjoy playing those decks. And I think you want to be playing either Hunter or Rogue in those style quests. So I don't know. Hunter kind of whiffs on some of its cards, but there's a lot of really strong, very low costed stuff in Hunter right now. And not a lot of other classes have that. So I think it'll catch a lot of people off guard playing an aggressive deck in Arena. And Hunter is maybe the vehicle to do that. So another one of these decks jostling for the I'm not as good as Mage, but I'm still pretty good style classes. First off, we have Crackling Razor Maw. This card is really good. It's a common minion, so you're going to see it a lot as well. Battlecry, adapt a friendly beast. I don't think it's hard to get there with the beast. I don't even think it's that hard to get there with the one drop beasts. There's a lot of them, especially. I mean, that's basically the theme of Hunter for constructed is one drop minions. There's a lot of beasts. A lot of the cards from the set are beasts, and a lot of your cards are already beasts. So the beast synergy is pretty easy to put together. Even at worst, this guy is just a Bloodfen Raptor, and Bloodfen Raptor with very significant upside. If I take a cheap beast and I give it poisonous and it kills off my guy's big thing, that's huge, right? If I give a minion Wind Fury, I give it +0/+3, I give it +3 attack. All these adaptations are really good, and it is a little bit tricky that you need to choose the beast ahead of time, so some of the adaptations won't always work. But again, I don't think it's very hard to have a beast for this guy to adapt. You can play this guy on turn 3, adapting another one drop. I think there's a lot of value here. I mean, getting even in the worst case scenario, this guy's a 2-mana 3/2 and he's perfectly fine. The adaptation is a really big game. Again, poisonous, clear out your opponent's biggest creature, trading in just your small guy, or just get in an extra 3 points of damage, or maybe even just surprise your opponent. Oh, I'm sorry, my Savannah Highmane, it's got Wind Fury now, so you're dead, right? Lots of great stuff you can do with this card. I think it's tier 1, top card. Pick this almost every time that you get it. Dynamancy, this card's interesting. There are a lot of beasts, but at the same time, I do kind of value my hero power of dealing 2 damage to my opponent's face. This card really depends upon the deck that you have. I'm going to say this card is average. It's like a tier 3 card. And of course, in a deck that has almost nothing but beasts, this card moves up to maybe like top of tier 2 type thing. In a deck without a lot of beasts, this card becomes useless. You don't pick it. But I'm probably willing to spec on this card a decent chunk of the time, right? Like if this is like my first pick, I'd probably spec on this. And then, of course, if this is my 20th pick, then I'm really, looking over my deck list and seeing if I have enough beasts. But this turns your hero power into something as good as better than priest hero power if you have enough beasts to go with it. So it can give you some very serious game. You'll win a lot of games off of this, especially given that some beasts are like the was it the Vicious Fledgling, the 3/3 that adapts every time it attacks a hero. Yeah, that gets out of hand real fast. Does not really fit with the tempo style that you're looking to do. That I think is kind of where you want to be with Hunter right now. But interesting card, and yeah, I'd be interested in playing around with this a little bit more and seeing kind of how often I get there with beasts. Grievous Bite, fantastic. It's a spell. It's common. It's class. It's from the latest set. You're going to see a lot of this. It's really good. Deal 2 damage to a minion, 1 damage to adjacent ones. Yeah, I like that a lot. 4 damage for 2 mana is an excellent rate. The fact that it's kind of split up among minions is as often going to be advantageous as it is disadvantageous, right? Splitting up your damage is oftentimes going to be good. Sometimes having your damage whiff, right? It hits nothing because there's nothing adjacent to the minion is sometimes going to be bad. I think this card is very good. I think this is tier 1. I think you pick this most of the times that you see it. And I think most importantly, if you're playing against a Hunter, this is something you have to play around. Luckily, you're already playing around things like Explosive Shot, Power Shot, but this is one more thing to play around when it comes to positioning, and the more things it comes to playing around when you have positioning, it's kind of like when playing around secrets. The more things the secrets do, the harder it is to play around everything. All the sort of theme of these Hunter AoE damage type things is they deal more damage to the middle thing and less to the side things, but there's still some complex issues where, like, what happens if you just have a bunch of, 3-drop creatures or something of varying health on the board, how do you position them? Sometimes, the positioning against Grievous Bite is not as good as the positioning against Explosive Shot, is not as good as the positioning against Power Shot, right? There's sometimes some complications there. So just having this as an availability is also big, but it's also just amazing card. It is only damage to minions, right? So this is removal that is not reach as well, which is kind of tricky, but I don't know. You have reach with your hero power. I think this is a good tempo-y type card, really strong. I think, again, you pick this most of the times that you see it. Jeweled Macaw. This is one of the cards that maybe is in the running for you pick this over the Grievous Bite. It's a 1-drop beast, so it's something for you to adapt, which is nice. But it's sort of like just a better version of Web Spinner. Obviously, you can't do Death Rattle shenanigans with this card versus Web Spinner, but it adds the random beast to your hand the turn it comes into play, which is a really big deal because it means one less turn of waiting around, which is also a really big deal whenever you're top decking. Because then you get to play the beast that you get from this right away as opposed to waiting for your Web Spinner or whatever to die. Also has synergy with another card that I'll be getting to, but I think this card is very, very good. Tier 1, pick this most times that you see it, almost all the time that you see it, actually. And this is just a good value card. Doesn't really fit into that tempo strategy, but part of the tempo strategy is adapting a friendly beast, right? Or having beasts to go with this stuff, and I think this is part of what you're looking to do. Cheap creatures, generate value, give you targets to adapt and buff and stuff like this. Raptor Hatchling, if you're really all in on the tempo strategy, this guy's pretty good if you're trying to still play Curvestone, right? A 2-1 for 1 is good in that sort of strategy. The Death Rattle, though, it's shuffling a 1-mana 4/3 Raptor into your deck. Yeah, it's nice when you find that Raptor eventually again, but like, it's not really generating you card advantage. I think you only really draft this if you're really all in on that beast stuff, if you're really all in on being aggressive and tempo-y, and then it's kind of okay. But even then, it's not fantastic. Even then, it's still at like, I don't know, bottom of tier 2. I think this card is below average otherwise, and I'm hoping to find other beasts and other cheap drops besides this guy. I think I'd much rather have a Jeweled Macaw, obviously. Right, I only lose 1 point of attack, but I actually get a card in my hand as opposed to in my deck. But who knows? I mean, the more aggressive your deck is, the more tempo-y and Curvestone type you are, right, and with your archetype, the more this looks good, and the more you actually start considering taking this over other marginal cards. But on its own, it's certainly it's even with help, it doesn't make it to tier 1 ever, and I think it only makes it like the bottom of tier 2 when you want to be in that type of deck. Stampede, I think this card is good. I've played against some opponents who only drew 1 card off of it, and then it's kind of bad. But even then, it's not horrible. It cycles itself. It's hard for this card to be dead, right? And a lot of time, it's basically add 2 beasts to your hand for 1 mana. Yeah, I'll take that. It's not hard to play a bunch of beasts, especially when this card is adding beasts to your hand. 1 mana is so cheap. I think this card is very often just gas. It's a pretty good top deck as long as you have another beast in hand. If you have this plus a Jeweled Macaw, right, like your turn 10, you play this and you play Jeweled Macaw, and then maybe you just spend all your mana that turn and generate a bajillion beasts. I think this card is really strong. I think this is another tier 1 card. I think it's very easy to turn on and have a bunch of beasts and make it work. And so I think it's really good. Not quite with the tempo strategy in a sense, right? This is more of a value card, you might think, but also really synergistic with a lot of cheap beasts, which is part of what you want to be doing with that tempo strategy. So I feel like this is a card that just gets you the final point bits of gas that you need to finish off an opponent, right? And I like it for that reason. Very strong card. Pick this most times that it's offered. Swamp King Dread, 7-mana 9/9 is a pretty good rate, but this is actually a downside. This text, after your opponent plays a minion and attack it, which means if they adapt a minion to be poisonous, it kills this. If they just play a poisonous minion, it kills this. If they adapt a minion to have a divine shield, then they get a lot of value out of that. This is like the opposite of charge, right? This is like giving your opponents charge. Everything that they play suddenly has charge now. And I don't know, 9/9 is fine, but again, I don't like this card very much. I think this is very average. I don't think you want to be playing the heavy costed stuff as a hunter anyways, and you certainly don't want to be playing this guy, which just kills himself ultimately. If your opponent has a bunch of cards in hand, this is the opposite of getting there. for your final points of damage. This is letting all your opponents just random stuff manage to save him. Yeah, I don't like this card. I think you avoid this most times that you can. Terrascale Stalker. 3/3 for 3, Battlecry, trigger a friendly minion's death rattle. We haven't really seen any good death rattles, have we? I mean, we saw the 2/1 that puts a good thing into my deck. Yeah, I think I'll pass on that. I don't think this guy's very good. I think you want beasts. That's typically what you want. You want well-costed minions. There are some decent death rattles, but you have to find them before you really draft this guy. I don't think you draft this guy and then go hunting for good death rattles. This is not enough. I'm going to pass on this most times that I see it. Tolvir Warden, 5 mana, 3/5, not a good rate. Draw 2 1-cost minions from my deck. Yeah, that's not really an impactful enough Battlecry either. This guy's pretty average. Does have synergy with the, put a 1 mana 4/3 Raptor into my decks, things of this sort, but he's already overcosted, right? He's a 5 mana 3/5. I could be getting a 5 mana 5/6, right? He's missing 3 points of stats at least. And drawing 2 1-cost minions from my deck is not really a lot of value. I guess it's nice because I get them out of my deck, right? So I don't draw them later. But yeah, I'm not excited about this guy. Very average, tier 3-ish. Not really excited about him. I'm gonna pass on him most times that I see him. And that's it for Hunter. I think, kind of, if we go back, one of the common things about the cards that were good in Hunter: Crackling Razormaw, Grievous Bite, Jeweled Macaw, Stampede, they all cost very little and synergize with cards that cost very little, right? Stampede, because you get to play a lot of low-cost stuff and draw a bunch of cards. Crackling Razormaw, because it adapts something small cost, right? Like you play a 1-drop and then you play this guy, and then you swing for like 4 with your 1/1 because it's now a 4/1. Yeah, I think Hunter has a lot of good tempo stuff going on. Not a lot of great value stuff going on. It doesn't really get into the elemental game. The only really value game you start doing is with Dinomancy, I think. But I think there's actually a pretty good window for Hunter to be the aggressive, tempo-y deck in this format. So I'm looking forward to playing it more, and I think it can be pretty good. And I think you want to, while the rest of the format is slowed down, I think you want to be playing Hunter pretty fast and making its hero power relevant and taking advantage of all these cheap, strong cards that have been offered in Un'Goro. On to the next class.